and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today is going to be the next part of our music app series. In this video, we are going to work on our login and register screens. Okay, so without wasting any time, I'll straight away jump to the code and show you what exactly we are going to do today. Okay, so now in the previous video, you'll remember we did this screen which had this highlighted text feature that we did. Also, we fixed this icon, the girl icon on top of that. So basically, that's pretty much what we did. And now in this video, what I'm gonna do is that I'll work on these two screens. This is basically a login account which has this logo on top, then a login to your account section. Then we have this email password sections, remember me section, login, forget password, and then on bottom we have something like this. And then we also have this pretty much similar to what we have over here, but again this is a register screen, so slightly different than what we have. So yeah, that's pretty much what we are gonna do in this specific video. And in the previous video, you remember that I exported a couple of things. There are some other stuff that we need to export as well. For example, the Google and the Facebook was already exported, but we need to export these icons as well. For example, the email icon, and then we have this lock icon, and we also have this eye icon as well. So I think that's pretty much what we need. So without wasting any time, let's just export these. So yeah, that's pretty much what we needed. Now we will go to our Android Studio, and that's what we are over here. This is basically the previous video code. So the first thing that I'll do is that I'll create a new branch from here, which is uh, part part 6, and that is going to be authentication. Okay, and now inside this, what I'm gonna do is that I'll basically create the simple authentication, which means that now the branch is ready. And the next thing would be to import the stuff that we needed. So basically for that, we need to go to the resource folder, go to the drawables, and then from over here, just straight away go to vector assets, select those vectors that we basically exported. I have this lock which was exported. So okay, I don't see the lock. There is slight like transparent mode, so we can fix that. Basically you can see that we have this lock over here like this. The next thing would be to import the next item, which is mail. We have this mail section, so let's just get that as well. And we also need the other one, which was what was the other one? I think it was the eye icon. So eye off, I think eye something. I'm gonna say eye off, finish. Okay, so now these are the two icons that we have, oh, sorry, three icons that we have imported. And now what we are gonna do is that we will work on setting up some sort of navigation flows where basically it will allow us to like to basically move from one screen to another. For example, initially we would be over here in this section, and when we click on get started, it should take us to the next screen, which will be basically more about showing the login screen or whatever there is. Okay, so let's just work on that. So before doing that, as you know that we need some sort of navigation flows for that as well. So I'm going to create a package and call it navigation there. That is my navigations. Now over here, I'm going to create two different files. One is going to be nav routes. This is basically a simple file that will be over here. And the next thing along with that we need is that we will be creating a nav graph. Okay, so I'm gonna say app nav graph. This is again a file that I'm gonna use. And now over here, what we will do is that we'll create a composable, call it function app nav graph, and that is going to be having a nav controller as a parameter. That's something that we need. Along with that, it will also need a start destination. Okay, so these are the two things I think that it's needed over here. Okay, and now inside that, what you need to do is that you can just straight away create a nav host, pass the nav controller as a nav controller, and then start destination is equals to start destination for this. And now over here inside that, you can just create your composables. Okay, I think this start nav destination might be a problem. So over here, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create an interface, and I'm calling that uh, Musify nav route. Okay, so that's something that we will be using. That's it. We don't need anything else for that. And now the next thing would be straight away to basically create some sort of um, objects classes. For example, over here you have this object, and we will call that as onboarding route, and that will extend Musify nav routes. That's one thing. Same you can create for login. So I'm going to say object login route as Musify routes, and then along with that you can register route. So these are something that we need, but there is one more thing that we need to do before we can go with this, and for that we need serialization. So you can say that we don't have a serializable over here, which is I think understandable because we haven't integrated that. So we need to do that. We need to integrate the serializable. Sorry, what just happened? This and this. So let's say if we import, you can say that we don't have any. So for that, we need to integrate serializable. Okay. So now for that, what we need to do is that we need to go to our Gradle scripts. And inside this, you can see we have these plugins over here, and we will also have some plugins over here as well. So I'm gonna use this. That's something that we can use. It says that we have an updated version. So definitely you can go to the updated version. And I think once you do that, you'll just have to sync this. Okay, so now you can see that it's done. And normally, what we do is that we try to use the Kotlin version over here. So I would recommend to basically, we'll see basically if there is no compatibility issue, since I also have 2 point something as a Kotlin version. And you can also use like something over here. You can define your I like your plugins over here for serialization as well. So I'm going to say Kotlin serialization, and it should be something like this. Okay, so you can take that over here and add it over here like this, and then rather than using the other version, I'm going to use Kotlin over here because that will help me with the compatibility issue. And now rather than using it something like this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say alias libs dot plugins dot kotlin dot kotlin. What did I do? It's Kotlin dot serialization. I think that should be fine. Serialization, and then apply false. Now, once you do that, the next thing would be to go to your app level Gradle file. And now over here, again, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use alias, and we'll be using Kotlin serialization for this. This is basically for enabling the serialization over here in this project. Now the last thing would be to use the dependency for that. So I'm going to use something like this and change to the latest version, whatever that version is, and then sync it. You can also again change it to the catalog version. So you can just replace it by clicking over here. It will replace it with the catalog version with this, which means that now everything is fine. Everything is there as expected. It will again take some time, and once everything is there, you can see now the serializable will be you will be able to import that serializable over here into your app. Okay, so that's something you can do. And now once you do that, we are now good to go. So we'll just get rid of that extra import thing. So now we have this onboarding routes, login route, and register routes that's there. And the next thing would be to go to the nav graph and start working on that. And rather than using it this, I'm going to use Musify nav routes. Okay, and now I'm going to use composable for that. And you can define like what are the routes for that, and inside that route you can always create your onboarding screen like this. So once you do that, I think you should be good. All you need is to pass that nav controller to this. Is there anything that's missing? Basically, okay, so that's something that I was missing. So now you can see that we have a nav host controller. We use a start destination as a start destination, and then for onboarding we have something like this. We can also use something for let's say for composable for login as well. So you can say over here that's a login route that's there, and then the last one would be composable for register route. So basically these are the screens that you can have, and we'll basically work on what exactly we want to show over here and how exactly we want to show. But before that, I'm going to take that app nav graph and go to the main activity over here. And now you can see over here we have all these things. Basically we greetings and stuff like that, we don't need that. I'm going to get rid of that. And also over here in this box you can see we have this box that we are using inside a scaffold. So basically you can straight away change it with the app nav graph. And now over here it requires two things from us. One is the nav controller or nav host controller. So I'm going to say nav controller is equals to remember nav controller as this. The second one would be to pass the start destination, and the start destination is going to be for now let's just use onboarding route. So once you do that, we'll just run it and see if basically by doing all these changes and all these stuff that we did, we are actually again able to land on this screen. And once we are able to land on this screen, we'll start working on the other part of the app, which will basically be setting up the login screen for us. Okay. So okay, now I think it's ready. So let's just run the code. Okay, so now you can see that we are still landing on this, and when click on this button, we are not getting anything. This is something that we need to work on. Okay, so now we have pretty much everything set up, and now let's just get started with working on the rest of the thing. So basically, let me just remove that unnecessary imports that we have. Okay, and now go to the feature section, and inside this feature section you'll see that we have already have a login screen that we did for testing out the flows. And you can also see that we have this login screen that require a couple of things. So what we need to do is that we just go over here to the app nav graph, and inside this login, since we know that we have a login screen, we need just pass these things. We'll just pass that, and then we are done. Okay, so now the login screen flow is there. It definitely doesn't have anything in term of design or anything, because it's just like an empty string with a couple of states that we have. So we'll start working on those, setting up those states and stuff like that. And based on that, basically, we will be showing different things. Okay. Now, basically, for login, what we need to do is that we need a nothing state, because as a initially when they're like when someone lands on that screen, we don't want to show some sort of loading or anything. We just want to show a screen which have a couple of things where user can basically click here and there, and then based on that decision, if it's a loading thing, we can start show the loading. If it's something else, we can do there that as well. Okay, so now let's just go to the Figma design for once. And now inside this Figma design, this is something that we want to replicate over here. So now if you look into this, it's something that as a starter, you can have something on top, and then inside the mid of the screen, we have all these things. And then in the bottom, this is something that will stay always in the bottom, and we won't be like changing it a lot. So there are a couple of things that we will be doing first, because that's important to do that before implementing. Now let's just get started with the first screen design. Okay, so I'm gonna use as a login, sorry, function. sorry, let's say composable function login screen content. Okay, and now you have like by default, you know that we have a couple of things. For example, the just add some spacing to the bottom. Okay, so now you can see that we have something as login clicked, on register click, and on forgot password, because these are the most of the things that we will be seeing over here. And now from over here we can start working on how we want to show that screen to the user. So I'm going to create a column as a starter, and now inside that column we will be creating, let's say, uh, something as a image. So I'm going to say image painter resource, that says painter resource r dot drawable dot ic back. Let me just import that file. Why it's not importing? And then we were using this as well. Okay, so for some reason the R file is not being loaded. So I'm going to manually import that file so that the error goes away. And now we have this image that's there on top. Okay, and now over here I'm going to say modifier dot fill max size, so that it covers all the size. And then maybe we can add some padding from all sides so that like it just doesn't go to that basically edges of the screen. And now we have something like this. Basically we have an image that is on top and left corner as a default. Okay, the next thing that we need is that we need a spacer. So basically I'm going to create one more widget, let's say. So we'll go over here into this sorry, not widget section. And then over here, let's just create a class and call it a spacer and create a file. Okay. And now over here, I'm going to say composable function musify spacer. Let's just define something as spacer. Okay. Now over here, we'll be using modifier is equals to modifier dot size, that is going to be 16 dp. Let's say 16 dot dp. I'm not gonna use this. Instead I'm gonna say size as dp. So we'll be using size from there like this. Okay, that is basically a default spacer that we will be using. And now we'll go back to the login screen. And now since I know that I need at least 16 dp from that, so I'm going to use something like this. Okay, and now we need an image that is basically going to be a center line. So there are two ways to do that. Either we can basically do some sort of wrapping around this image and make sure that it goes to left, or we can do something like we can create a box. Okay, and then that says modifier dot fill max width. Basically this will cover all the width of that screen, and inside that we will be creating something like this and also we'll say IC logo. Okay, and we're not gonna say fill max size. Instead I'm gonna say that you can have a size of, let's say, 120 dp from each side. That's something that we will be doing. Now with this, basically let me just do one more thing. I can enable the preview mode. So I'm going to say preview composable function login screen preview, and then do something like this, and we'll get over here and try to build the app once so that it basically builds and now starts showing me the screen that we have. I would also want to wrap it inside Musify theme so that the theme that we are using, that styling that we have, is also applied to this. Let's see if it works. Okay, so now you can see we have something like this. The image is there, sorry, the back button is there and the icon is there, but we want to, as I mentioned, that we want to align that button in the center. So I'm going to say align, and then I'm going to say center. center this. Okay. So hopefully once you do that, it will go to the center of the screen, and that's what we wanted, right? What's next that we need is basically this specific login account that says log into your account. This is a text, and the size is like more than 32, which is quite high for us. So now again, we need a Musify spacer. So I'm going to say Musify spacer 16.dp as a spacer. And then along with that, we'll basically create a text. And that text is basically going to have some text as login to your account. Okay. That's one thing. And then we'll also be using Musify, not Musify Android theme. It should be material theme dot typography dot title large. Okay. And then we also be using color as on primary, I would say. Okay, so basically color is something like this. And what else? I think we can also define the width size for that, so that it basically covers the width. And now I'm going to say text align, and that is going to be center. So I'm going to say text align center, which means that now the text will go to the center of the screen. You can also define like size for that. So I'm going to say size, that is going to be 32.sp, so that if you want slightly bigger text, which is this, I would say doesn't looks good to me, so I'm going to use slightly lower to have something like this. Okay, now we have the login logo, we have this text. The next thing that we need is that we need these sections that are basically the email and password section. And you can see this is basically a text field with a white text and a grayish kind of icons. And it also have a borders and rounded corners. So like there are a couple of things that we need to do. And how do we do that? So basically, again, we'll go to the widget section. And now inside this widget section, I'll create a new Kotlin class, and I'll create something as text fields. Okay. And I'll create a file for that. So this is basically something that we did. I'm going to create a composable over here and call it function musify text field as this. And now over here, it will be having so much things that we need. I'm going to use the outline text field for this. And now if you go to the outline text field, let's say if you go with the one that's basically taking string as this, you have all these things. Okay, so just copy everything that's there, because this will help you with all the stuff that you need, so that you can use in future. You can customize your own musify text field, rather than at that time you create your like a different one for your use. So we have something like this. Now you know what we need to do. We can just pass all the things as value equals to value, and I think everything is there. I think we can still go for null, since it's a nullable thing. So yeah, that's something that we have. The text field is there, and now we need to like preview that, right? So basically I'm going to say composable, sorry, not composable, it's going to be preview, then composable, and then we'll say function preview text field. So it's all these things that we need to import. So we have the leading icons. For icon, I think I would use image. So let's use image, painter, painter resource, and then I'm gonna say r dot drawable dot I, sorry, it should be lock. So that is basically the leading icon. And we also need to pass that content descriptions as null. That's for one. And then the other one is going to be, sorry, for trailing icon, I'm going to use image. Sorry, that was eye off. So that's something we will be using. And now if we go over here and try to build and refresh, we should see something like this. So basically the supporting text section is not needed. So I think we can get rid of that. It's basically more for the error kind of things that we need. So yeah, that's something that we have. We don't have those round corners. We do have a couple of things. For example, things looks really good. The label is looking good. I think we can also add some test text to this as well to see how it looks as a text to the user. And now you can see that it looks really bad because the colors is not looking good. Now over here, rather than using this, I'm gonna say color dot copy, and then I'm gonna say text color. So basically focus color, material theme dot color scheme dot on primary, and then also focused color should also be something like this, material theme dot color scheme dot on primary, so that you can see that it looks something like this. Also for borders you can say, so I'm going to say focused indicator, and for that we'll be using gray. So I'm going to say light gray or something. And we also need to define the shape for that, so let's use that as well. We should have a shape somewhere over here. This is the shape. Okay, so now you can see that it's passing a proper shape from there, which is basically a default shape. Instead I'm gonna use round corner shape with a 16.dp as, okay, let's just import the unit again. For some reason my Android Studio is behaving quite weird, and now you can see that it has this round corners that we can use. What else is there that we need? I think pretty much what we have, everything is there. And this is something that we can use now. So we'll basically use this Musify text field, go to the login screen, and over here after this text we need to add a spacer, and then after spacer we'll use this Musify text field. I'll import that. Now for these there are some things that we need for, like for leading icon it's going to be email. So I'm gonna say I see should be mail. Okay, and we don't need the trailing icon for that. The label is email. I think the label color should also be changed, but yeah, other than that there are some more things that we need. We can add a modifier to that, so it's modify dot fill max width, so like it covers all the spacing that's there. And I think before that we also need to add some sort of padding to this, so I'm going to use some sort of padding as horizontal padding, and that should be 16.dp so that it leaves some space like this. Okay, now basically the thing is that the icon is quite dark, and that's because I changed some sort of screen design in the from the Figma. I basically changed these colors, so rather than these having this, instead I'm gonna use 7.5. Now once you do that, you go back to your login screen, try to refresh it. Okay, so now you can see that it's grayish. We can further increase the size, the color of this, basically rather than using 7.5. Yeah, I think that's something which should be good, and based on it should also be like similar to what we need. So I think we have something like this for email, and then you can just copy the same thing and paste it over here for password. So that's going to be password for that. And now, oh, along with that, along with the leading icon, you also need the trailing icon as well. So that's something that you have like this. So once you do that, you'll see that now you will be able to see the stuff like that as well. And also, rather than using this, you'll be needing lock as a icon for the password. So yeah, that's basically something we have. And now the next thing we have over here is that this remember me section, which is a checkbox. So now over here, again, we'll add a spacer. That's something that we need. And now over here, we'll basically be using a remember me pass checkbox. So I'm going to say checkbox. Okay. And now over here, you have a couple of things. For example, you have these things that you can use. And over here, inside that, you can also define the colors as well. So for example, for check, it should be color. For uncheck, it should be white, and uncheck marks should be on primary and things like that. So this is basically something. I think you can also use the primary for uncheck like this. And now if you set that check to true, you will see that now it's filled with this. So I think that's something that we need. We've defined those check boxes. And now we also need some sort of text for that as well. So now for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to wrap it inside a raw. So I'm going to say raw. Okay. And now inside that raw, we'll basically use that checkbox, place it inside that. And along with that, we'll basically use a text that says, remember me, and use stuff like this. And now we need to centrally align them both. So that's something that we need. We'll be using vertical alignment as alignment dot center vertically. So now once you do that, you'll see that we have something like this. As a remember me section is there. I'll try to reduce the spacing. It looks quite big enough. And we'll also add some spacing in between that as well. So I'm going to use a spacer for that and says something as a.dp. Not this spacer, it should be musify spacer. So that basically we have the space in between the both text fields that we have used. Now you can see that we have the space. Okay, what's next? The next thing is basically to have that login button. So we will be using that as simple spacer first, and then we will be using button. That's a normal button that we have. We'll be using modifier dot fill max width, but you can also add some padding to that so that horizontally it's 16.dp for that. And now along with that, there are a couple of more things. For example, we need an on click for that. So we are not going to use that on click for now, but we'll have that button and we'll use something as this. That's login button with all these functionality. There is one more thing that you can add as shadow. So we can definitely add some shadow to that. Elevation should be, let's say, a.dp. So basically, you can see we have this elevation of the button. You can see there is a shadow that's there, and we need to basically define a shape for that. So basically you can also define a shape over here and say a round corner shape should be enough. We can also add 32.dp, so that basically it basically stretches accordingly. And I'll be using 8. I think 8 should be enough. Yeah. So now we have this shadow alongside that button as well. We go over here, we have this forgot the password text button, and then along with after that at last we have this sections. Now after the button you can again say text button, and then over here it will be using on click as a parameter, and then we will be adding a text to this that says forgot the password. And we don't, I think, yeah, that's pretty much what we need, but we need it to be centrally aligned. So you can say okay, so now you can see that we have something in the center as forgot password, and then the section in the bottom that we need for sorry over here, the section in the bottom that says or continue with, that says a Google icon, a Facebook icon with a circle, and then we have this don't have an account and based on the register. So basically what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to create a single composable. The text would change like this, both text that we have. So basically it will change accordingly, and on action for like for Google Facebook action, and then for this account action we'll use it differently. Okay. So yeah, that's basically important, and I'll show you how basically I can make these composable configurable rather than using it at two different places. So yeah, let's just get started with that. Okay, so now you know that we have this section which is quite different. Uh, Go back to the Android section, and now over here, let's create a new class. I would say it should be inside this widget, and you can create a Kotlin class, call it auth items. And now over here, I'll be creating a composable function social icons, social cards. Okay, social card. Okay, social card is basically something that it will have. The thing is that we will be using. Uh, there will be a ID. So I'm gonna say our. Sorry, that should be string resource as an integer. That's one thing. Along with that, we'll be using on click item for that. So on click is something that once user basically click on that, and then we'll bang on FB click. That's again, and then on Google click. So these are some things that we will be using over here. And what else do we have left? I think now we need to basically work on the design of this. But before working on the design, I would want to have a preview for this. So I'm going to use composable for that. Something like this. r.string dot. So we have something like this. Okay. And now you can see that it doesn't have that already have an account. So I'm just create something like already have an account. As I said, highlight. So that's something. And then I'm going to say login. Okay. So now over here, it is something like this, but again, we need to cover it in the C data. So just make sure to have it over here. Okay. So now I think we can already have it in C data. So just make sure to that you have the correct text that you use. Now we have something like this. Okay. And now inside that, we will be using we can basically now preview that when we refresh it. Definitely we don't have anything yet for now, but I think it will look good later on. Now we need a raw as a first item, and over here we will be basically creating a box. The width of that box, the modifier, the height is going to be 1.dp. Okay, that's something that's there. The next thing would be the weight of that. I'm going to add 1f to that, like this. And we also need to add a background to that. So I'm going to say modifier, sorry, material theme dot color scheme dot on. So we have something like this. So now I'm going to take that and place it over here. Now when you do that, you'll see that it still doesn't show anything. Right now, the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a spacer that says, not this, instead it will be musify spacer, and we'll also add modifier dot fill max. Okay, let me just slightly, yeah, now you can see that it looks like this. We have this spacing in between both of them. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna add these spacers on start and end as well. So we'll be using add this and also this, and also I would say let's use a musify theme for displaying of this, so that we have this all these styling and theming, whatever that's there. So okay, now you can see that it's there. Okay, the next thing that I need, I would say let's use 8 for this and 8 again, like that, and then inside that I'm going to create a text. Okay, and we know that it says continue with, it says or continue with. I'm going to say or continue with, it should be labeled small, like this. And we also need the theme as on primary for this. Okay, I think the label small should not be bold. Font weight. Okay, now it looks good. Okay, so now that's what we have, and now we need to basically centrally align all of them. So I'm going to say horizontal arrangements. Sorry, we don't need the horizontal arrangement. Instead, I'm going to say vertical alignment, and that should go as alignment as center vertically. Now you can see that we have this thing available properly, right? And I'm gonna wrap it inside a column. So we can add the rest of the things as well. Now the first section is then. Next we need is that we need these two icons, which is the one circular icon button for Google, and then other one is the circular button icon for Facebook. So let's just get it done. So now the same auth icons, I think I can do one more thing. I'm going to create a composable and say function as social buttons, and that should be just on click, and also it should give us resource as integer. So these are the two things that we need from that. We need a box. We don't need to vertically align anything, and inside that box we can say it should not be max width. Instead I'm going to say clip I'm going to say circle shape for that. And we also need a border of 1.dp, and then we need a color for that. So I'm going to say color should be, so the color on primary, I think it should not be on primary. Instead, it should be surface. We need the background for that. We don't need that. We also don't need that fill max width. We can say the size as something like this, which is fine. Okay, now we have this. And now inside that, I'm going to create an image. And that will basically be something as painter resource along with that ID that we have. Okay, so now we have the social buttons, and then when user click on that, like clickable, we'll be using on click dot invoke. So which means that now the social button is basically clicked. And now inside over here, like after this raw, we'll add a spacer. That's one thing. And now we'll be creating a raw that's there. And this raw will basically be containing the social button. Social button. Social button on FB click. I'm going to say ICFB, and we'll be using the same for Google. We need a Musify spacer between them. And I'm going to say modifier dot fill max width. So I'm going to say horizontal arrangement is equals to center okay. Now it's something like this. I think I just need to do one more thing to add. That is the background. Dot background. That should be black. The reason I'm using black because unfortunately I don't have the icons in SVG format. They are in PNG, so that's why I have to use it something like this. So yeah, that's what we have as the icons. And then in after that, we need is one more thing, and that is going to be a text. So we'll be using again Musify spacer for that. And now over here, you can use the highlighted text for this. Okay, this highlighted text is basically gonna take that resource, string resource that we have passed from there, and then you can define your span style for that. For example, you have that span style that we need. For example, you need the, I think that's pretty much. I'm gonna say modifier as modifier. Text style is going to be labeled small for that. And now you can see that we have all these things. Copy, and then for color, I'm gonna use the white color for that. So and let's just not use white instead. It's use material theme dot color scheme dot on primary. So yeah, that's something that we will be using. And along with that, you can also use the modifier dot clickable. And then this clickable is basically going to be the on click dot invoke. Okay. Now what we did is basically we did all these things to to handle all these things properly. Now I'm gonna say it should be horizontal alignment as center horizontally, so the text also goes to the center of that. And now you can see that we are done with this. You can always add something to the bottom with of that as well, so we don't have to, the text basically doesn't cut in the bottom. Now you can see there will be some spacing as well on that section, and now we can use this in for both the login section and the sign up section, and I'll show you how. So now we need to go to the values.strings.xml, and now this is for already have an account, and the other one is going to be don't have an account. Okay, so I'm going to say do not don't have an account. Should we say don't have an account? Okay, so I'm gonna say don't have an account, don't have an account, and then rather than using login, it will be using register. Okay, and if you go to the auth item this time, and let's say the ID that we are passing in the preview, this is something like this. If I pass that, you'll see the text changes, and it for this it will also be highlighting the register text, which is pretty cool, I would say. Right, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Now what else do we have left? I think nothing left over here. We go back to the login screen, and now we place that specific thing there. But before that, I'm going to use one more thing, and that is again an interesting thing. So basically for different screen sizes, let's say for example, let me create that social card over here. So I'm going to use social card over here like this, and now this is basically a login account. So I'm going to say r dot strings dot all do not have an accounts text for this, right? And then we will be using on click for normal click, and then on FB click for FB click, right? And then for Google we have this thing. So now we use that, you'll see that it basically goes to the top section, which is not required. We want that to be added into the bottom of the screen rather than top of the screens. So to handle that, so basically to fix that, we need to add something like this modifier box, and then we'll be adding a modifier to that, say modifier dot weight, and we'll use 1f. So basically what it will do, that for each screen, whenever there is some extra spacing, it will add that spacing to it, else it will not do anything. One more thing I think we are missing over here is that the text size that we have set is quite small. So we need to define a better text style for this. So for that, I'm going to go back to my this widget social card section, and over here you can see that we are using label small. So I'm going to use label medium for that, so that it looks slightly better size in and then we also have this highlighted text, and you can see that we are using label small. So I'm going to use again label medium for that, so it looks slightly bigger. Now if we go over here, try to update that by clicking that update button on top, you will see that it will increase the size of these fonts slightly, so that they are readable as well and clickable as well. Now you can see that it's there, right? So I think the login screen is there. Almost everything in the login screen is done. Now the next thing that we need to do is that we need to basically use that over here inside this nothing section, so that we can use them. And now over here you can see that we can also use the view model on event section, or like you can also define your own methods for that. For example, you can say on login clicked for this case, for navigate sorry, for this on register click, you can also say on register clicked like this. And for this you will say, oh sorry, it should be not nav controller. Instead, it should be view model, and this should all be view model. And then you can say on forgot password click. So basically, that's something that you can do. And yes, I think that's pretty much what it is. For login button, you can again, like, you know that we have this buttons over here. So for this, you can see, where is the login button? I think this is the button, login button. So you can define that on login click for that. This is for on forgot password click, and this is for on register click. So basically, these are the one we are not handling the Facebook and Google, because so that's why basically it's still there like that. But I think other than that, it's pretty much something like this. Okay, now we don't have these methods in the view model, so we'll go over here to our view model class, and we'll create those functionalities. So let's just create on login clicked, on register clicked, and on forgot password click. So once you do that, the screen errors goes. We are getting some error over here. We'll fix that. We don't need these for now. Or I think we need these. So I'm gonna say view model scope dot launch, and inside that we'll basically use this. Same is going to be for that. The event is going to be changed, so I'm gonna just copy paste that over here. And for login clicked, I think we should be, for now we should be something like this. We should not do anything. Okay. So what we are gonna do? There are a couple more things that we need. So for example, I'm gonna say private wall username. Okay, and that is going to be mutable state flow of a string. Should be equals to mutable state. No. Right. The next thing would be to create a password. And now over here we will be using, rather than using this, I'm gonna use email, and over here I'm gonna use password. Now I'm gonna say something like this as state flow. Same goes for the password. And now over here we'll basically create some function says on email change, that will basically update the values for password, and for password it will say on password change. And we also will have visibility of the icon. So I'm going to say private is password wall underscore is password visible. That's done. And then for this you'll be using this. And now over here we'll be using something like, instead we will be using the same value. Like basically it will be more like a toggle thing. Okay, something like this. We just missed one more thing. It should be not. So basically every time when it's basically toggle it. So now that's basically some methods that we did. We are not going to use this. Instead, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to properly navigate to different screen based on the click for on register specifically. Okay. So for that, you know that we have this login event that says shows error message. We don't have anything else over here. So over here, I'm going to say data class, or instead I'm going to say object navigate to register as login event. Okay, so now we have this. Now we go back to the login view model, and now rather than using this, I'm going to use this like this. Okay, so now what happens is that when user click on the register, it will navigate the user to this. And now over here inside that, it start complaining because it doesn't have that navigate to register section. And from this section, now you know that what we need to do is that we need to basically go for register route, something like this. And we don't need these things. So that's pretty much something like this. Okay, so what's happening over here is that when I click on that don't have an account register, it should take me to a register screen, which is not there yet. So it will crash, but we can create one, right? So let's just create that. I'll go over here to create feature, create a new package and call that package as register. Now from over here, we'll basically create a MVVM feature that says register. Let's press OK. Now, once you do this, you will see that you have this register screen. It doesn't have much in term of the design, but you have this register screen, which is a good sign. So we'll do this. We'll go to the app nav graph, and now inside this register, now we know that we have this register which can be used, and you can pass that nav controller to that as well. So now we have the onboarding screen, we have the login screen, and we have the register screen. The onboarding screen needs to be updated. So let's say when user click on the get started, we should take that user to a relevant section. So now for that, I'm going to work on the onboarding card. We'll basically say on clicked, right? That's something that we have. Now over here, you can see that we have this on click get started. We'll add it over here. And along with that modifier, now we need to define that on click as well. So we have something like this. We'll be using ViewModel dot on get started clicked. Okay. So that's pretty much what we have, what we need. We go to view model section. We create that function as on get started clicked like this. I'm going to say view model scope dot launch. Let's say update the storage to not show the onboarding again, which means that user have already seen that. I'm going to use it as to do because we'll add it later on. And now we'll be using event dot emit and I'm going to say onboarding event dot navigate to login. This is basically a class that we will be using inside this onboarding event. We don't have that over here, so let's just create something like this. And now over here inside this onboarding screen, we can define that is. And now we also need to like pop up to a specific route. So we need to define the onboarding route for that, which means that what it will do is that will basically it will remove all the previous screens. So let's say when from login you don't when you press back you don't land on the onboarding, right? So that's why basically we do that. And now after all these things that we have done, it's a lot. Let's just try to test it out and see if the stuff that we did is actually working. Okay, now we have something like this. When I click on that, it crashes. Okay, I know why it's crashing. The reason is that I added login instead. What we need is that we need a login route, a proper route to define that. Let's just try again. Okay, let's just click on that. And now when I click on that, you see that I landed over here. Now, as I mentioned that when I click back, the onboarding will not show. Okay, now you can see that we get that onboarding as first screen. When I click on get started, we land over here. We still are missing some text over here. That's because of the theme, that the way we have set the theme. And now when let's say when I click on this register section, when I click on that, you can see that it takes me to another screen that is a register screen which has this loading. When I go press back, you can see that I still landed over here. The problem over here is that this text styling that we have. So if I go to my themes, for dark mode on primary, it's almost black. Instead, it should be white. And for light mode, it's on primary says this. Instead, it should be black. I think that's something that's why I was missing all that design issues. Let me just try running this again. Okay, we'll get over here to get started. And now you can see that the text are now prominent and they are looking properly, and then you can also define like those your values as well. Right now it's definitely not working because we haven't implemented that, but yeah, it looks something like this, which is, I would say, it's a good thing. Now the next thing that we need to do is that when I click on that register, we want to show proper screen over here rather than using just this screen. So let's just get started, work started, and start implementing that. For that screen, you know that we have pretty much similar designs. For example, we need at least these sections over here. There will be some extra stuff that we need, and we might have to remove a couple of things from the design, but other than that, it is going to be pretty much similar. So what I'm going to do, that I'm going to use the same login content section. I'll basically copy all that column that we created, and from there I'll copy that, go to my register screen. We don't have the preview for that. I'm going to say composable function register screen content, and we'll have pretty much something like this. And from over here I'm going to create that column inside this, and along with that we'll also use composable, sorry, along with that we'll be using preview composable it should be at the rate composable, and also we need to set Musify Android theme. And now we set that, pass those value into this. And also one more thing that we need to do is dark theme set to true. So the preview that we get is basically for dark. And now over here, from here, you can see that we don't have these Google Facebook links. So I think we don't need that. Register clicked and on login click is pretty much we need. We don't need this text button, so we can get rid of that as well. And you can get rid of that as well. Okay, so now let's just try to render that. It will be pretty much similar to what we had, only the forgot password would not be there for now. Okay, so now you can see we have pretty much similar stuff that we need. Okay, we need a couple of changes over here. So rather than using this, it should be saying register your account. That's one thing. Then we have this Musify section that says email, and before email we need name. So let's use this, and it should be saying name. Enter your name for that. I don't have the icon for that, so let's use this for now. And for password, we have this, right? So I'm gonna use the same thing. Only thing that's different is going to be confirm password. So that's something. Okay, I think that's pretty much we have what we have. We don't need the remember me section as well. So we'll get rid of that as well. Okay. And this login button is going to be register. And also this is going to be on already have an account. So this is basically be changed to this, and on register click, it should not be on register. Instead, it should be on login clicked. Okay. Now I think we have pretty much what we needed for the register screen. The design is pretty much similar to what we had. So we didn't have to make a lot of changes. But yeah, we definitely need a couple of more things. For example, we need a nothing state for that as well. So that's something. And we go to the screen, add that nothing screen over here, register square nothing state, and we'll be using this with something like this for both cases. No, we don't need to do anything like that. Instead, we'll be using view model for that. So I'm going to say view model dot on register clicked, and this is going to be on login clicked. Okay. So if you go to the view model, you definitely need these two functionality at least as a start. So I'm going to say on register clicked and on login clicked. And for login, we need view model scope, navigate to login. That's something we don't have that class in the event. So we'll add that. So yes, I think that's pretty much what it was. Now, one more thing that we need, again, I'm going to take it from the login scene, and that is for this email, password, and all these things. We'll get over here, and now over here, we need these. Along with that, we also need the name as well. That's for name. And other than that, we have email, password. We also need a confirm password. Okay, so I think, yeah, that should be private. So now we have all these things as well, and we need to define those functionality for over here as well. So on confirm password change, on name change. So yeah, that's the view model that we have, and we need to go to the register screen back. It will complain over here, so we'll fix this section as well. Now this is basically the issue, since we know that the register screen, when we landed, it was basically from login screen. So rather than doing again a navigation, will basically pop back to the previous screen. So yeah, that's something how something we will do. Now let's just run this and see how it looks. Okay, so now it's the code is running. We landed on the onboarding. When I click on that, it takes me to the login screen. From there, I can go to the register screen. It's still loading because the view model, the default state is still loading. So I'm going to change it to nothing and then rerun the code. Now we have this. We'll go to the get started section. We landed over here. We click on the register. You can see now it's register section. We have this name, email, password, confirm password, and stuff like that. We can click on login and it will take us back to the login screen. And now if I go back, it should close the app, right? And this is what it did. So basically the navigation is also working smoothly and all the rest of the stuff is doing good job. The only thing that we need to do is that we now basically need to take that input from the user over here, and when user click on those input, like sorry, once user add those input and click on that login, let's say, or register, we should take that data to the backend, so the backend can process that and then give us some sort of data in return. So basically that's something that we are going to do in this second part of this video. Okay, so now let's just start working on implementing the backend functionality for that. So basically, to implement the backend functionality, what we need to do is that we need to import, open the IntelliJ IDEA, the backend code, basically. So we'll just wait for the IntelliJ to load, and now you can see over here, basically, that something like this has opened. Hopefully, it's the backend code for for the music app. Yeah. Okay. So now you have this. Okay. And once you run that, you will get something like this. Now we'll run this code so that we can access the endpoints. And I've already shown, like, this is something that I've already shown to you as well previously, that you can access the uh, documentation of the endpoints by basically going to the local host or whatever the URL the system provides and slash and add open API, so that it can give you all the local give you all the documentation that you need. But let's just wait for the build so that it runs. Okay, so now you can see the app has run. Now when I click on that, you will see that it says hello world, which means that the server is now running. And now if I do over here and say open API, this will basically load the Swagger. Now over here, these are the two endpoints that are required or that are needed for this specific video. The one is the login one, and you can see that you have this example request, and you have this example response for that. So basically, if you try to log in, you will get these kind of information. And if you do basically register, all you need to do is that you need to define the name, password, and email, and in return you'll get something similar to what we had over here. And now over here in the Android code, you know that we are making web calls, right? So basically, to make those web calls, we need to have some sort of handling before making those web calls, because if, let's say, there are some error codes and things like that, we might end up in like situation where we don't want to. So 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 we might end up in like cases where the server might respond in a wrong way and things like that. So basically, to handle all these things, what I need to do is that I need to go to the data section that we have, and inside that, okay, so now inside this data section, we'll go to the network like before, and inside this network, let's create a Kotlin class and call it save API call. Okay, and make it a file. We don't need much over here from this. Now we have this thing that basically is a safe API call. What does it mean? That it will help us making those web calls and handling the different error cases or different cases for that. So for that, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create a seal class, and that's called to be resource of T. That's a seal class that we need. We don't need anything extra from here. Now over here, in case of success case, we'll be using simple data class, which is basically a success. We don't need the loading or empty case again for this, because that's not needed. For error, other than the message, it can be something as there might be throwable that's basically received. So basically, that is something, it should be a nullable or something like that. And along with that, we can also say, let's say if there is some sort of data, right? That's basically received in case of error. Basically, sometime what happens is that the data is received, but it's like in a wrong way. So basically, we will also be handling in that cases as well. And I think that's pretty much what we need. Now, the next thing would be to create a function that is going to be a suspend function, and this is going to be a T, and we'll say safe API call. And rather than like making it into a T, instead I'm gonna say response, that is an, so basically it's a retrofit to object, and now over here that response will contain that T. Now you know that it's started complaining, so we know that this can happen. So let's just keep it this way, and or you can say return. Let's just do something like this. Now over here, rather than this, what we need to do is that we'll say wall a response API call, and then we'll say, oh, if response dot is successful, in this case that the success, the it is basically successful. So I'm gonna say wall body, which is response body, and the body is null, which means that the body there is something in the body, in that case we'll basically give it a success case. Else we'll say it's basically error, which says that the response body is null and there is like no new message for that. And in case if it's not successful, we'll basically say that the error messages, basically we'll just give a proper like error message saying that there was some sort of error in that. Now in case of exception, there will be different kind of exception that will basically check. So let's say the first and the top one would be basically a socket exception. So I'm going to say socket timeout exception. That's one thing. And the next thing would be to have unknown host exception and then IO exception. Then we will be using a cache block for, let's say, HTTP exception. So HTTP error. And the last one is basically something like this. So basically this is something that we did. And this functionality will basically help us with getting all these things, making all those web calls and getting proper error messages and proper responses from there. Okay. Now, this is done. And the next thing is that we have the status repository. We created this. We were not requiring it properly. Basically, we didn't need it. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new Kotlin class over here, and I'll call it as Authentication Repository. Okay. This is going to be a class, and we need to like add that single annotation for that from the Koin. And along with that, what it needs is that basically it will be having those the API service that we require. And we don't need this suspend function like this. Instead, we need a couple more suspend functions. So I'm going to say suspend function login, and it will basically be login request as login request. And in return, what we need to do is that we'll be saying resource as login response. Okay. So now that's something we need to do. We definitely don't have the login request and login response. So on that, I'm gonna go back to my backend documentation, and now you know that the request should contain these two things. It should contain an email and password for that. So let's just add those. Go to the model section, create Kotlin data class. Okay, there's something wrong with this Kotlin data class, so we can create our own class. So I'm gonna go over here, Kotlin, and we'll create a file and name it as login request. That's the data class. Okay, now make sure that you basically have a correct file for that, name for that. So I'm gonna say wall email and passwords. I think that's pretty much what we need. That's for login. And then we'll basically use the same thing for that. So now there is just one more section that you can use. You can define your XMLs over here. So now you can basically define your XML into this data class over here, and then just download this, or you can see what's the output class. So something like this. I'm gonna just use this instead. So over here we'll use something like this. We need those serializable name and all that. Now the next thing would be same for, let's do for the response for that. So we'll just copy that response and let's just paste it over here. You can define the name as what should we name it? Let's name it login response. Okay. So now you can see that you have this data class that says login response. Just use that. And now over here, let's create a new Kotlin class, call it login response for that. And this is again going to be a data class. It doesn't matter whatever class this is because I'm going to replace it with this. And we also need a user class, which is this. So let's just use that user class as well. Create a user class or a user model for that. So I'm going to create a Kotlin class. Let's call it user. That's going to be a class. Okay, I think user login response is there, login request is there, user is there. So we have pretty much everything that's required. Now we need to just import those. This one is imported. We can import this one as well. Both are imported. We don't have the login function in the API service. So we'll get over here and then we'll start working on creating that post login functionality that we have. So yeah, that's something we will be using. Login request will be as a request and the body will be as body. Now we need to verify the endpoint for that as well. So that's important to verify the endpoint. And you can see that this is basically the 88 your server, and then it should be auth/login. So yeah, that's something that you need to make sure. Okay, so now I've copied that and I'll go over here and paste it like this. Okay, so now what I did is that basically we have this login request that basically handles all those kind of error cases and things like that. And we have this repository that basically uses that login functionality from here, and it's also a singleton, which is basically it uses a single. And I think now we don't need that temp service. We can just get rid of that. So let's just delete that. Yeah, we can do that. Okay, so now we deleted this, and this is done. Now we'll go to the login into the UI section, go to features, into the login section. And now inside this login view model, we have all these things. Now, along with that, what I'll do is that I'll basically import that repository that we created. So I'm going to say private wall user, auth repository like this. Okay. And since we are using Koin, so it will automatically be injected. We don't have to do anything else than that. Now we have all these things that's required here. And inside this fetch data, rather than using fetch data, we will be getting rid of that functionality. Instead, we have this login function. From over here, what we'll basically do is that we'll gather all those data that's basically required. So it would be something like this. We have loading. Initially, it will go to the state loading, and then for the response, we don't need this. Instead, we need something else. For example, we'll say wall email is equals to email dot value, password is equals to password dot value. And then you can definitely define that if there is like no empty, and like if the email address is a valid email, you can again say some sort of message to the user. I think it should not be like this. Instead, it should be event dot. Let's just do something else. Instead, let's just take that text from there, and it should be some sort of one-time value. So I'm going to say event dot emit, and that is going to be login event dot show error message, and that error message should contain that value. So it should be something like this. Same is going to be for this one as well. So it should be say emit invalid format. And if there's like any other thing, for example, password error length that you need to define, so all these things would be checked. And then now what we need to do is that we need to create that repository request object. So I'm going to say request is equals to login request. Okay, and then login request need a email and password for that. So we'll just use that request and pass that request inside this functionality. Now we know that this response is basically a resource if state. So I'm going to say when response, when we get that response, this means that now we need to check what exactly is this. It's a success case. We'll basically change that value to success. Along with that, we need to pass some sort of data to this, which is not in our case. In login case, we don't need anything like that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my login state, and inside the success, rather than having something like this, we'll just use a object for success, because we don't need to pass anything, right? So that's something that we did. We can get rid of that, and now we know that we need to basically, after setting it to success case, we need to navigate to home as well. So we'll go to the navigate to home section, sorry, no, login event section, and now over here we'll create an object saying navigate to home, that will take the user to the home. And inside this login screen, you can also define the navigation for that as well. So let's just do that as well for this, and it should be home route. I think we don't have that, so we'll just create one. It should be home route. Okay, so now once we do all that, you can import that, which means when the login is successful, in that case, what it did is basically it went to that specific case. In case of error, it basically showed this error message to the user. And I think there is one thing that we missed over here, and that is basically on retry. So I'm going to say function on retry clicked. What it does is that basically it goes to the nothing state, which means that now it will be back. And over here for this loading state, let's say if this is something happened, we'll also say function. Let's just do pretty much similar to what we did. So basically, rather than having this, instead we'll say load in that nothing, so that it basically switch back to the previous state and not just stays on that loading state. So that's also important. I think now everything is ready for the login section. We definitely need to bind these things, these values with the actual values from the screen. But other than that, I think we are pretty much good. Yeah, just one more thing I think that we need to do, and that is uh, private wall is remember me active false, and then we also need to define that as well. Okay, and create a function, so which means that what it should do. So now we need to bind all these values like this name, password, password match, remember me, and all that thing to this login screen. Okay, so now over here what we need to do is that the content goes over here. So basically all those contents that we have basically is supposed to be added over here, like this values, the on value change and all that. So we need to enhance this method. We basically need to enhance all these, the value that we pass to it, and also based on that we need to enhance how exactly we need to use them. So basically for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create state over here. I'm going to say wall. It's not state, it should be email. Email is equals to ViewModel dot email dot collect as state. Same goes for password. Same goes for is remember me. Same goes for, no, it should be is remember me active, and this is going to be is password is password visible. So it's going to be is password visible. So yeah, I think that's pretty much that we need. And now over here we'll pass those values to this. So basically what you need in return in term of name, when you need a name, sorry, email as string, password as string, is remember me as boolean, and password visible as boolean as well. So these are the things that you need to pass. So We'll change that email password value. Remember me, and we also need this. So that's the one side traffic that we added. Now we just need to add these values into this. So all we need to do is that we add this as email. This is going to be password. So that's going to be password. Then we have this checkbox. That is basically going to be remember me. That's for remember me. And for password visibility, you can also say like this one. Now over here it's visual transformation. In that case, we'll say if basically if the password is visible, it says none, else it will be password visual transformation. So I think that's something we should do when user click on that. And also I would like to add some tint when the password is like when user click on that and it's visible. So this leading icon section, when user, let's say, click on that, we'll also want that section to like light up. So I'm going to add that box and say modifier dot clickable, and we'll say on show pass clicked dot invoke. Okay, now this is something also okay. So now basically this is one side thing that we did, and we need to add that to this as well. Okay, so now here this is, and what else I wanted to do? Yeah, I mentioned that we wanted to add some tint to this. So basically the color filter, for color filter, I'm going to say if, so basically if it's there, then we do, else we'll say it should be primary. So like if its password is, if password visible, then it should be null. Else, sorry, if its password is visible, then we should show a primary color on that. So we'll say primary, else we'll be say setting it as null. And I think that's pretty much what we have from one side of the data. Now what we need to do is that we need to make sure that whenever there is like a change or in change in any form, like in the email and password or remember me or show password, we want to notify that back to the system, right? So for that we should also handle that as well. It should not be default, it should complain. So now you can see for this, we'll say on show password clicked. In that case, we can say ViewModel dot is on password visibility change. That's something that we need to do. We also need to say on name, or sorry, on email change. That should say something like this. On password change, something like this, and on remember change. So these are the things that we need. So let's just add those values to this. These are again methods with string, then for email, for password, and for remember me change. Now we need to add these values into the relevant places so that we can access them. And how do we do that? So basically this is the first Musify text field as email, and you can say we have this value change. Instead I'm going to say on email change for that. for this, I'm gonna say I'll change the on value chain to on password change. That's another thing. And when the checkbox value changes, for that I'm gonna say on remember me change. And then for password visibility, you know that we have, I think we already have implemented that, so we are good there. Okay, so I think this is something we did plenty of things for this, and I think we don't need anything else. All we need now is just to run and see if the endpoint is working and we are landing on a home screen. And since you can see that if you go to the navigation navgav bar, we don't have a home route, so I'm going to create a composable home route for that. Right now there is not implemented yet, so I'm going to create just a text that say it's a home. Home screen. And we can also add some style so that it like looks a little bigger. So let's say material theme dot typography dot title large, and I think that should be enough. Okay, so now let's just run it and see if the login is working as expected. Okay, so now we are over here. Let me just center this, click on the get started. We get over here. Now over here I'm going to pass my email, or I think I'll pass the email that we use for login. So we'll say user at example.com. Where it was, it should be somewhere over here. Okay, so we'll say user dot pass, and the password is basically PASSWORD 123. And you can see when I click on that, okay, for some reason this specific section is not working. We'll fix that. And you can also see that when I click on one item, it basically works accordingly as well. I think there is a specific way for using it. I tried to add basically the direct clickable, but I think that's not working. But we can fix that. Now, when I click login, it should load and then take me to the home screen in an ideal scenario. If it fails, then definitely we need to investigate what's wrong. So let me just click on that login, and you can see it logged in, and it says network error Java number format exception expected at end, but was something like this, which means the created user that we basically had. Let me just go back and get over here into this section. So now what we did, I think the model that we created are supposed to have it should be in the user. Yeah, you can see it's int. It should be long. And I think that was the mistake that we did. Okay, so yeah, that's something. And with the on the login screen regarding this section, we have this image. Okay, so it means that I added it to somewhere else, to some other screen, I think, where I added that box. Okay, let me see, where did we added this? Okay, so it's for email change. Unfortunately, I think I added it in the wrong place, so that's why it started complaining. So we'll just fix that. We need to go to the password and go to the trailing icon over here. And now let's use something as icon button, and then on click from there. An on click should equals to on show pass clicked. And now inside that we'll use that image for that specific. Yeah. Now I think we're good. Now let's just try once again running this. Although the login worked last time, but it was just crashing because we had some formatting issue. This time I hope we'll not have the formatting issue. So we'll straight away. Okay, so it's loaded. Now let's just click on get started again. This time again, user at example.com. Password is going to be PASSWORD 123. And now let me click on that button. And now you can see when I click on this, the color changes, and you can also see the password as well. And when I click next time, it goes away. And same is going for the remember me. So I think that's pretty much what we had. And now let's click on the login section. We did the login, and the login successfully happened, which means now I landed on the home screen. This is something that we wanted to do for our home screen, right? And now the next thing that we need to do is that we need to implement the same functionality for our register screen as well, where basically we'll take the information from the user and show it to the sorry, we'll take the information and register the user. Okay, so let's just go to the register screen, and we have pretty much, I think, email, password, confirm password, is password visible. I think there should be one more way, that is on retry click should also be there. Register click should handle all the relevant stuff. So I think we should start working on that, and let's add private wall authentication repository. That's what we needed. And now over here, we'll say view model scope dot launch. Now inside that, we'll start working on all the data that we require. So I'm going to say wall name dot value, email dot value, password dot value, confirm password dot value, and then we need to verify if there is any sort of change, or like if you can also like add the rest of the check as well. For example, the email check. So basically the email should be valid as well. Password length should be more than 6 as well. And we need to make sure the name should not be empty. I think that's pretty much, these are the conditions that you can add for a better use case of yours. Okay. And now after that, we'll add that loading section. We need to register request. Now we don't have the register request. So basically we'll go back to our authentication section. And now you can see from over here, now it basically needs a name, an extra parameter. So we'll go back to Android Studio, and over here, we'll take the login request. You can see we have this. We'll just create a copy. Just copy paste that. And I'm going to say register request. Okay. Now inside that, we can just create the same thing. The only difference would be that it will take a name as a separate parameter. So we'll pass that name as this. And now we are good to go with the register request. So we'll go over here to our, where is our register view model? You can use this. And now you can see that the register is not able to understand what exactly register is. So for that, we'll go over here to the authentication repository and create the register function for that. So straight away, nothing much that we need. We need definitely need a API service for that. So along with that, we'll basically use post functionality as this. But just make sure that you're using a correct endpoint and you're not using something wrong over here. So just to be sure, I'll copy the register and paste it over here. And now I think we are good over here. So the login view model functionality is there. And definitely the success case is also complaining. It's saying that you cannot use something like this. Basically what I want is that I would love to have something similar over here like this, so that let's say if there is anything in terms of handling, we basically handle that. So I'm going to say register state.success, and I'm going to say register event for that. Register state. And I think this is something that's there. It should be register. Okay, so the problem again is that our states that we created, the success requires some sort of data. We don't need that. Instead, we'll be using object for that. And we also need an event for navigating to home. So I'm going to say navigate to home for that. And then I think we are good. The navigate home section is there. And then all these things is there. And yes, I think pretty much everything is there. The only thing that's left is that we need to bind all these functionalities again. So no, the actual thing is basically we need to bind all these parameters to the actual UIs. Okay. So we'll get over here. Add remaining branch. Okay, we'll basically do that. Now we know that we need to navigate to home. Just make sure to use the correct so we need to go back to the we also need to include the login route as well, not just the single this one. So basically we'll say all the previous screens, whatever there are, we need to just like pop everything from there. And yes, I think that's pretty much we have. Now I'll go back to my login screen because I need a couple of things from there. And the things that I need from there are these. So basically I need the email password. I might not need the is remember me, but I think the rest of the things are needed. So I'm going to just go there, copy that, add it over here. The remember me should be removed from there. And then on register, click on login, click is there. So other than that, I might need show password, email change, password change. These are the values that I might also need. And we also need to pass name as string. So basically name, email, password, and we also need confirm pass as string. So these are the values that we need to pass. And in return, we need on email change, on password change, on name change, on confirm password change. Do we have anything left? I think we don't need the on remember me for that. And now over here, what we need to do is that we need to define those states that we basically fetched. So name, email, password, confirm password, is password visible. I think that should be enough. We don't need anything else. So yeah, that's pass those values. So we'll say name dot value, email dot value, password dot value, and confirm password dot value. These are the values that we need to add. Then we need to pass the on show pass click, on email change, on password change, on name change, on confirm password change. And what else? I think that's pretty much. On confirm password change, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. Okay, I think we need to pass that is password variable dot value as well. So I think once you pass all these value, it should be done. And now we need to use all these values in a relevant file. So the first one is name. So I'm going to use name for this, and or for this section, we'll be using on name change. Okay. The second one is email. So we'll be using email, and instead over here, we'll be using on email change. Same goes for password. We'll be using password on password change. Confirm password on confirm password change. And we also have this trailing icon. So we need to have an icon button for that. Icon button on click. It should say password clicked. And we'll use this just like we did for the login. And for this you can say on login click. For social media, for both it should not be login click, instead it should be on register click for this, and then login click for the other one. And now we need to pass those values that it requires. Okay, so now I think everything is ready. And now what we need to do is that we need to check out, okay, there is one more thing I think that we missed in the last one as well, and that is the on retry click. That is also we need to do ViewModel dot on retry click, which means that now it should revert back to the previous state, so that we don't remain stuck in that. So that's something we need to do, and we should also do it for the login screen as well. So if you land in the login screen and you have this error state over here, you can add this to that as well, so that it basically handles that. And now let's just run it and see if we are able to log in with the, sorry, if we can register with the backend and get the similar response and can handle all these things that we require. So previously we did the login. This time we'll be basically using get started rather than using this. I'm going to go to the register section, and this time I'm going to register my own account. So I'm going to say Furkan, and I'm going to say code with fk official at gmail.com. Password should be 123456. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, so I think the password values were not added. So we need to fix that first before I make a register. Sorry, before I make that account on the system. We need to go to the email change. That's the text field for password. And now you can see that we don't have the visual transformation added for that. So I'm going to say visual transformation. And now we'll say if is password visible, we'll use something like this, and I'm going to use the same thing. And the reason I'm using similar or same for both confirm password and password as that normally if user click on one, it should show both of them. It doesn't matter uh, if it's the one or the other one. And so that's why I'm going to use the same section for like this as well. So like any click should be handled properly. And now let's just try once again. Okay, so now the app is loaded. Let's just go to get started, go to the register section, and now let's try again with my name, password, code with fk official at gmail.com, password 123456 123456. Now you can see that enabling, like clicking anyone basically works, which is cool, right? Now let's click on the register section. It loaded, and now it landed over here with the home screen, which means that the registration functionality also worked properly. And now the next thing would be to basically store that user somewhere so that we can access the information or at least the token later on when it's needed. But other than that, I think the first functionality for our login function is done. And now what we'll do is that we'll basically work on the rest of the thing in the next video, because this video is, I think this is going to be the longest video on my channel. But I think it's something very easy and easy to implement. I have not done very like complex things in this video. It's just simple and you should be able to understand that. But if you don't understand anything, please comment down below. You can join my Discord server, post your questions over there as well if you feel any kind of problems with your code. And I'll see you in the next video. So till then, happy coding. Bye. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you don't forget any update. If you got any question, you can join my Discord server. The link is in the description. Also, for quick updates and tips, you can follow me on Instagram. Until next time, keep learning, keep developing. Bye.